whispers of pain, welcomes you. The letter that finally broke him was only 3 sentences long. "Dear Mr. Cole," it began, "after careful review, the department has determined that your current level of disability does not meet the criteria for increased benefits. We appreciate your service to our country." He read it 3 times at the chipped kitchen table, the sleeve of his empty left arm pinned neatly to his t-shirt, his right hand shaking so badly he almost tore the paper. "Appreciate my service," he whispered, "but not enough to help me bend down and tie my own damn boot." Outside, the mailbox flag hung crooked. Inside, his life was quietly collapsing. Ethan Cole had been a staff sergeant in the U.S. Army, 82nd Airborne. Afghanistan, 2 tours. He had jumped out of planes into black skies, walked roads where every step might be the last, held dying men while calling in medevacs with a voice that never cracked. He'd lost his left arm just after sunrise on a road that had no name on any American map. One second he was laughing at a dumb joke. The next he was on his back, ears ringing, the sky spinning, his hand reaching for a rifle that wasn't there. Later, in the German hospital, they told him the blast had taken more than the arm. Nerve damage, chronic pain, traumatic brain injury, PTSD. He came home with medals in a small velvet box, a discharge paper that called him honorably separated, and a body that woke him up screaming at 3:17 a.m. every night. At first, everyone said the right things. His wife, Jenna, met him at the airport with a shaking smile and a "Welcome Home Hero" sign their 8-year-old son had colored. His town in Ohio held a ceremony. The mayor handed him a certificate. Strangers clapped his shoulder, always the right one, never the left, and said, "Thank you for your service." Then the applause faded, and the paperwork began. The VA appointments, the forms in tiny print, the waiting rooms with bad lighting and flickering TVs, assessments, evaluations, questions about how often he had nightmares, how many times a week he thought about killing himself. He told the truth at first. "It's bad," he said. "I can't sleep. I forget things. I wake up on the floor because I'm sure I'm back there. I get lost driving to the grocery store. My arm hurts, even though it's not there." They wrote it down. They nodded. And then, over and over, they mailed him the same answer. 30% disabled, then 40%, then 50%. Never enough to cover the medications, the therapy, the rent. "Maybe don't tell them it's that bad," another vet in the waiting room said once. "They'll just mark you as unstable and cut more." At home, bills stacked like sandbags around the front door. Ethan tried working. Construction turned him away with apologetic eyes. "Liability, man. You know how it is." One warehouse hired him to scan boxes with his good arm until his back gave out and he missed too many days for migraines. They let him go over email. Jenna picked up extra shifts at the grocery store. She came home smelling like sour milk and exhaustion, eyes rimmed red. "Maybe we should move in with my sister for a while," she suggested once. "Just until we get back on our feet." He bristled. "I'm not dragging you and Noah into someone else's house like we're a burden." Her silence said she already felt like they were. The night she left, it was quiet. There was no screaming, no slammed doors, just a small suitcase by the couch, Noah's stuffed dinosaur sticking out of the zipper. "I can't do this anymore, Ethan," she said, voice flat. "You're not getting help. You won't go back to the hospital. You won't appeal. You just wait for a letter that never changes." "It's not that simple," he said. There's a process. There's always a process, she snapped, then caught herself, lowering her voice when Noah patted in, eyes sleepy. We're going to stay at Aunt Lisa's for a while, okay, buddy? Just for a while. Noah hugged him tight around the waist, little hands settling for a second on the pinned, empty sleeve. Come with us, his son said. Please, Dad. I'll fix things here, Ethan murmured. I'll make it better, I promise. They left on a Wednesday. He counted his promises and his pills in the same hand. Weeks later, the letter arrived. We appreciate your service. He almost didn't tell anyone. Almost let the denial swallow him whole. But on a night when the pain in his phantom arm burned like barbed wire, he found himself dialing a number another vet had scrawled on a coffee shop napkin. A legal clinic for veterans. The woman who answered sounded too young to understand war, but her voice was steady. My name's Rachel, she said. Tell me what's going on, Sergeant Cole. He sent her everything. Denial letters, medical records, notes from therapists, the list of medications that made his hands shake and his vision blur. 3 days later, she called back. Ethan, they undervalued your case, she said. By a lot. They misapplied their own guidelines for amputations and ignored your traumatic brain injury symptoms. He let out a humorless laugh. So they messed up the paperwork. Welcome to the club. It's more than that, Rachel insisted. We can appeal. If they keep stonewalling, we can take it to federal court. Court. The word made his stomach flip. Against the government. I can't afford that. I work pro bono for vets, she said. You fought for them. Let me fight for you. The appeal was denied. The next one, too. Every rejection used the same bland language, insufficient evidence, as if X-rays and surgical reports and psych evaluations were rumors, not proof. Rachel filed a lawsuit in the U.S. Court of Appeals for veterans' claims. This isn't just about you now, she said. It's about the dozens of others they've lowballed using the same error. On the day of the hearing, Ethan sat in a courtroom in Washington, D.C. that smelled like old wood and colder justice. He wore the one suit he owned. His pinned sleeve itched. Across the aisle, government attorneys shuffled thick binders without looking at him. He listened as Rachel stood before the judges, 3 of them, black robes, impassive faces, and spoke words he'd never been able to string together for himself. Sergeant Cole lost a limb in combat, she said. He suffers documented PTSD and traumatic brain injury. The law is clear about the percentage ratings for those conditions. Yet the VA repeatedly assigned ratings that do not match its own criteria. When he sought reconsideration, they treated it as inconvenience instead of obligation. The government's lawyer, a man with a perfect tie knot and perfect distance from suffering, argued that administrative discretion allowed for interpretation, that any mistakes were harmless errors. Harmless, Ethan thought, picturing eviction notices, his wife's packed suitcase, his son's eyes. Rachel projected their bills onto a screen. Mortgage arrears, medical debt, the notice from the power company. These are not harmless, she said softly. These are the consequences of a system that thanks veterans with its mouth and denies them with its pen. One of the judges, an older man with tired eyes, leaned forward. Counsel, he asked the government attorney, on what basis did your agency discount the traumatic brain injury diagnosis? The man flipped papers, hesitated. It appears it may have been overlooked in the initial rating, Your Honor. Overlooked, the judge repeated, for 7 years. Silence settled like dust. The hearing ended with no verdict. "We'll take the matter under advisement," the presiding judge said. Weeks crawled by. Ethan went back to Ohio, to the same chipped kitchen table, the same empty chair where Noah had once done homework. Then, one afternoon, Rachel called. "Sit down," she said. "We won." For a second he thought he'd misheard her through the static. The court found the VA was arbitrary and capricious in how they rated your disabilities, she explained. They ordered them to recalculate, back pay included, and they cited your case as an example for systemic correction. "How much?" he asked, because life still ran on numbers. She told him. It wasn't a fortune. It didn't regrow his arm or give him back the years he'd spent begging secretaries for appointments. But it was enough to pay off the debts, enough to keep the house, enough to show, in black and white ink, that the harm done to him had a name and a remedy. "They admitted they were wrong," he said slowly. "They admitted you were right," Rachel replied. Months later, Jenna stood on the same porch she'd walked away from, Noah half hidden behind her leg. She'd heard about the case from the news, disabled veteran wins landmark appeal, and from the check that arrived with Ethan's name on it, finally bigger than the bills it had to smother. "I'm not here for the money," she said before he could offer it. "I just heard what you did, that you didn't give up." He shrugged with one shoulder. "I almost did." Noah stepped forward. "Mom says you made them listen," he said. Ethan looked at his son, at the boy who'd once clutched a stuffed dinosaur, and begged him to come along. "I had help," he said. "But yeah, they heard me. Finally." At night, the pain in his phantom arm still flared. The nightmares still came, though less often. The government that had sent him to war and then tried to pretend his broken pieces were a rounding error had been forced, by law, to see him. He knew there were others still waiting in crowded clinics, still opening thin envelopes that said, "Denied." For them, his name would sit now in some dusty law book, a case cited in footnotes and training manuals. For him, it meant something simpler. When he looked at his reflection, at the empty sleeve and the lines carved by years of fighting invisible battles, he no longer saw just damage. He saw a man the system had tried to ignore and failed.